Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grand Line's Online Salon. I'm Rama, a communications coach from Grand Line, Philippines. I'm excited to introduce to you my partner, Miss Florence Rivera. If you love to travel, she owns Travel Bug Philippines, a tour company. She also manages other education technology companies like 51 Talk, a Chinese startup, and Go Fluent, a European distance learning company. Ms. Flaw takes on many roles. She's also an HR, training and business consultant, and general manager of Grand Line Philippines. Hi, Ms. Flaw.
Hello, Ms. Roma. Hello, everyone. I'm excited for another episode of today's Online Salon. Our topic today is very relevant. People are not for sale. Human trafficking in the Philippines.
In this program, we feature several social issues that will allow the speakers to share their expertise and insights regarding the topic. We will be asking them questions about the main topic, and at least 2 speakers will be given time to state their points. Are you ready? So let's have this video from Interagency Council Against Trafficking.
Ang human trafficking ay isang makabagong paraan ng pang-aalipin. Ito ay paglabag sa dignidad ng tao. Ito ay isang krimen. Ang human trafficking ay ang pagkuha at paglilipat ng tao sa pamamagitan ng dahas at panglilinlang upang pagsamantalahan sa paraang prostitusyon, pornografiya at iba pang uri ng sexual na pananamantala, pang-aalipin o sapilitang paninilbihan, mail order bride o ang pag-aalok ng kasal sa isang dayuhan at ng Filipina na may kapalit na bayad, pagtanggal at pagbebenta ng mga bahagi ng katawan, pagkuha at paggamit ng bata para sa iligal na gawain kabilang ang pagsali sa mga armadong pakikibaka o ang pag-aampon ng bata upang sila ay pagsamantalahan. Sama-sama nating labanan ang human trafficking. Laban kontra human trafficking ay laban nating lahat. Tumawag o mag-text sa 1343 Action Line o dumulog sa anumang ahensyang miyembro ng Interagency Council Against Trafficking.
Human trafficking is a heinous crime against humanity that is devastating the lives of an estimated 45.8 million people in the world. Many understand that modern-day slavery was removed from our world last century. However, human trafficking still lives amongst us and is growing at an alarming rate each year. In fact, there are more people in slavery today in comparison to the time we thought human trafficking left us. There are various factors of evolution in the systems of our modern-day society that have contributed to the growth of this affliction against humanity.
Human trafficking is a criminal activity that is often highly organized in nature, often crossing national borders and legislative reach. Traffickers operate this lucrative business, making use of the latest technology available to hide their criminal activities with little fear of being caught. The advances in technology are fast, providing them with more places to hide. This is particularly alarming, Ms. Flaw, for the rise of the internet and particularly the dark web are enabling traffickers to operate their crime with increased ease in today's world with the use of the cyberspace.
That's right, Ms. Roma. Human trafficking and the prostitution of children is a significant issue in the Philippines, often controlled by organized crime syndicates or people with wicked mentality. In an effort to deal with the problem, the Philippines passed RA 9208, the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2003, a penal law against human trafficking, sex tourism, sex slavery, and child prostitution. In 2006, enforcement of the law was reported to be inconsistent, but by 2017, the U.S. State Department's office had placed the country in Tier 1, meaning fully compliant with minimum standards of the U.S. Trafficking Victims Protection Act. The government demonstrated serious and sustained efforts by convicting and punishing more traffickers, effectively coordinating identification, referral, and provision of services to more victims, increasing efforts to prevent trafficking of Filipino migrant workers and to assist those who become victims of trafficking overseas, and implementing procedures to reduce the backlog of trafficking cases in the courts.
The Philippine government continues to rely heavily on NGOs and international organizations to provide services to victims. The Department of Social Welfare and Development operated 42 temporary shelters for victims throughout the country. 13 of these shelters were supported by a non-profit charity organization. Philippine law permits private prosecutors to prosecute cases under the direction and control of a public prosecutor. The government has used this provision effectively, allowing and supporting NGOs.
In addition to that, Ms. Roma, in 2007, the government's Interagency Council Against Trafficking established its first anti-trafficking task force at Manila's International Airport to share information on traffickers and assist victims. In 2006, the Philippine Overseas Employment Agency, or POEA, issued a new employment requirements for overseas Filipino household workers to protect them from widespread employer abuse and trafficking. This is a remarkable action from agencies involved. As for cases of trafficking of Filipinos to foreign countries, the most common scheme is recruitment for job placement. Based on information from experts, more frequently, Filipinos are trafficked and forced to work for the benefit of organized crime groups in Korea and Japan. Other destination countries to which Filipinos are smuggled and trafficked are Hong Kong, Singapore, Middle East, Malaysia, Brunei, Kuwait, Italy, US, Taiwan, Jordan, and countries within Europe. Today's topic has been a social issue for the longest time. There have been preventions and efforts to control it. However, we can't seem to evade or completely eradicate this social problem, and the question is why? Thus, we have invited experts to help us understand this issue better. Let's begin by introducing our guest today.
Let's welcome our first guest speaker, Ms. Karine Amlon Saloria. Karine has been the regional coordinator of Voice of the Free since she joined the organization in 2015. VF champions the rights of exploited children in the Philippines, especially those who are victims of human trafficking and modern slavery. While working in Voice of Free Foundation, she was commissioned as the Philippine representative to Leaders and Laureates Summit in New Delhi, India, last December 2016. She also attended the Students Opposing Slavery International Summit at Washington, D.C., an event that aims to form an international alliance of young advocates against human trafficking. Karine was also invited to the regional workshop on protection of human rights and labor migration for employment, initiated by the Center for Southeast Asian Studies at Bogor, Indonesia, last October 2017. Together with other participants, they were able to develop tools that will help protect migrant workers across ASEAN and crafted recommendations for serious consideration to the member states and the ASEAN. Currently, Karine hosts a radio program called Tingog sa Kagawasan that airs weekly in a local radio station in General Santos City. The program aims to raise awareness on various social issues in the local context. Again, let's welcome Ms. Karine Amlon Saloria.
It's also our pleasure to be joined by our next guest speaker, Ms. Cheryl Luceno. After earning a degree in social work in 2004, Cheryl began her career with the then Visayan Forum Foundation as a social worker, where she was closely involved in rescue operations and managing cases of human trafficking victims and abused domestic workers. She has enriched her passion, skills, and experiences in her field through her participation in various local and international seminars and trainings. She participated in the Field Exchange Program for domestic workers in Lima, Peru back in 2006. And she was a facilitator for the debriefing session with domestic workers in Hong Kong in 2010. She was the speaker on the impact of human trafficking on children during the International Children's Trust Conference and Annual General Meeting in London. And in 2015, she took part in organizing a fundraising event for the Voice of the Free, together with Freedom for All in Los Angeles. She became the coordinator of the Manila Airport Halfway House in 2008. It is the first shelter facility for human trafficking victims who are intercepted at the airport. Cheryl also helped VF's founder, Maria Cecilia Obenda Pasis, organize anti-trafficking task forces in other transit areas in the Philippines. In 2009, she managed the operation of the Zamboanga Halfway House and was able to establish partnerships with different anti-trafficking stakeholders. A year later, she was promoted as the unit head of Protective Care Services, a core program that caters to survivors of human trafficking and modern slavery through holistic shelter-based services. Cheryl has remained on the front lines of the fight against human trafficking and modern slavery in different capacities throughout her 15 years of service with Voice of the Free. At present, Cheryl continues her professional journey as the Executive Director of the Voice of the Free. Thank you for joining us today, Ms. Cheryl Luceno.
Hi, good day.
Hello there. Hi, Ms. Cheryl. Thank you for joining us. So let's start. Every year, thousands of men, women, and children fall into the hands of traffickers in their countries and abroad. Almost every country in the world is affected by trafficking, whether as a country of origin, transit, or destination for victims. It opens to a wide array of criminal activities done by big-time syndicates. However, now, we cannot only expect that these kinds of criminal activities are done by syndicates. Recent news show that even parents have subjected their own children to these serious crimes. Aside from that, most crimes are now done in the confines of homes or done by someone the victim probably knows. So in relation to this, our first question for the day is, what are the types of human trafficking and what are the current trends? So let's hear from the Executive Director of Voice of the Free, Ms. Cheryl.
So the types of human trafficking in the Philippines, basically we have three most common types, and these are sex trafficking, forced labor, and death bandage. So sex trafficking, usually women and girls are being forced and coerced into prostitution, and they are really physically and psychologically abused by the traffickers and even by their customers. And forced labor, this is also known as involuntary servitude. This refers to the extraction of work or services from any person by means of enticement, violence, intimidation, or threat, use of force or coercion. It also includes deprivation of freedom. So we have lots of cases of domestic workers working overseas who have been into this situation. And also the last one is death bandage. This refers to death bandage is another form of human trafficking, which an individual is forced to work in order to pay debt. And for the current trends, human trafficking is now linked to natural disasters to human trafficking. In Voice of the Free, we have encountered a lot of victims who are coming from areas with natural disasters. For example, during the time of Typhoon Haiyan, we have assisted many victims who migrated from their region to the national capital region looking for work as domestic workers. So basically, during disasters, the victims are really vulnerable because they are looking for a job. They want to have food on their table. So they're looking at other opportunities outside their region. And the traffickers make use of that vulnerability. So natural disaster, it's a big factor why there are numbers of victims of human trafficking. And of course, we have also catered a lot of cases of online sexual exploitation. Here at Voice of the Free, actually, we have catered as young as 1 year old
Wow.
girl who has been trafficked online. She actually belongs to a group of young girls as young as 5 until 12 years old. And then they were sold online to several men to other countries. Actually, later on, we will be having with us one of the survivors who also belong to that group in order to share. Yeah, so basically, those are the types of human trafficking that we have here in the Philippines.
Right. Okay. Miss Karine, would you like to add to that? Maybe some more trends or anything you want to say about the first question?
Yes, also, I would like to add another trend why we have increasing cases of human trafficking is also the demand for cheap labor in our country. So as we industrialize, we have a lot of need in labor, and there are also some business owners or manufacturing company owners who wants to cut off their expenses. So that's why instead of paying laborers properly, some of them resort to human trafficking, and there are news about that. So the demand for cheap labor in our country forces uh, lots of manufacturers and business company owners to subject some people into human trafficking.
Okay. And Misha mentioned earlier that there are victims as young as 1 to 5 years old. Aside from young victims, who are the usual victims and who are at risk of becoming victims?
So aside from those young victims, also people in poverty are at risk of being trafficked. The traffickers or the perpetrators, they take advantage of the economic situation of a family, the fact that they don't have enough to eat, they don't have enough to money to send their children to school. They capitalize on the poverty of the Filipino families to and entice them that instead of working in their places in their rural communities, they can go in Manila or in the national capital region or even abroad with and um, and promise them employment, which in fact is actually not true. These are lies, these are deceptions by the traffickers. But because of the situation of these Filipino families, because of their financial situation, they have nowhere else to go but to hold on to that promises of the traffickers. So that makes them really vulnerable to human trafficking.
So, Miss Karen, does that mean that these victims usually know what they're going into?
Most there are some that they have an idea what they are going into, but some of them, since some of them are minor in trafficking, if you are a minor, your consent is irrelevant. So even if the minor is know that he will be subjected into prostitution when he or she goes to Manila, the fact that an adult or a perpetrator or a trafficker is subjected him into that kind of work, into that prostitution, he will still be, or he or she will still be liable. So some of them are also don't know that when they go to the national capital region or to other countries that they will be subjected into this kind of abuses. A lot of them, I mean, most of them really don't know. They will only find out about this when they reach that place where those abuses will now happen. So they don't have any choice.
Right, right. And Miss Karine, by the way, is joining us from General Santos City. Is that right, ma'am? In
Yes,
Mindanao.
yes, I am at the southern tip of the Philippines.
Right. I love General Santos. And Miss Karine, so from Mindanao, are there more and more victims? Or is it increasing? Or is Mindanao specifically targeted for that, for these kinds of activities?
Based on some studies and also some reports that we have been receiving in Voice of the Free, there are increasing number of victims here in Mindanao. So we knew that Mindanao was plagued with a lot of natural disasters for the past years, and also some local wars like the Marawi siege and the Zamboanga siege. So this has caused increased the vulnerability of some already poor families here in Mindanao. And a lot of the cases that came from Mindanao are those of domestic workers who are trafficked to work in countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, and other Southeast Asian countries. And when they reach those countries, they are being trafficked by those who recruited them here in Mindanao. And also our region, Region 12, sad to say, we have been identified as a hotspot in cybersex.
Oh, really?
Mm.
And I think it's also very easy to traffic people from the southern tip of the Philippines, right? Especially going
Yes.
to Malaysia,
Mm.
Indonesia, and because it's very near. I heard that
Yes.
you can even take a small boat to
Yes.
cross
Yes.
to Borneo or Malaysia.
Yes.
So there's it's easy for them to do that. All right, so thank you so much, Miss Karine. We'll go back to you
Thank you.
later. Going back to Michelle, ma'am, the Philippines is still tagged or was tagged recently as tier 1, which means we are supposed to be fully compliant with minimum standards set by the US Trafficking Victims Protection Council. But compared to other well-developed countries such as Japan and Singapore that were tagged as tier 2, how is the Philippines? Are we really in a better situation than them in terms of human trafficking?
Yeah, so actually we are following the standards of the US Department of State. So based from that standard, the Philippines has been fully compliant with
Mm-hmm.
what has been set. So far, the Philippines has received its status in tier 1 for the past 5 years. So meaning this shows that the Philippine government is really serious in addressing or in combating the trafficking situation in our country. So we have relentless, comprehensive efforts to prevent trafficking in persons and to protect the victims and also prosecute the perpetrators or the traffickers. So it is said that in 2020 we are still in tier 1 status. So meaning that we fully meet the minimum standards of the elimination of trafficking, and we have sustained efforts in combating the issue. So I think that's what we have done so far, and we keep on increasing our effort to really address the issue. And we have showed that we have lots of cases who have been convicted. And now we are also addressing the demand side, wherein we are having coordination with other countries in order to trace those perpetrators outside the Philippines. I think that's one of the most important as well, that what we are doing now in the Philippines is also to address the demand side.
Yeah, but that question actually came from one of our Japanese students here because Japan, as we know, and Singapore are first world countries. And it's just a bit surprising that they were tagged as tier 2, whereas Philippines, with our number of human trafficking activities, is tier 1. So would you know, ma'am, what kinds of standards are needed to be compliant with this U.S. trafficking victims protection?
Yeah, if we are like having enough mechanism to protect victims of human trafficking, let's say here in the Philippines, we have government organizations and nonprofit organizations who have been offering shelter facilities, both temporary and long-term facilities, in order to cater to these victims of trafficking while they are having their legal case ongoing. And we are also addressing the prosecution of the traffickers. So if we have in our custody the victims, then we can make sure that the legal case will prosper because they can really provide their testimonies in court. You know, here in the Philippines, we have a long litigation process.
Right.
So we really need to take care of the victims because their testimonies really matters in order to prosecute the traffickers.
Okay. Ma'am, do the victims of human trafficking self-identify as victims of a crime? And do they ask for help immediately?
Yeah, so usually human trafficking victims do not often seek for immediate help. It's because during the recruitment phase, usually that the victims are being oriented by their traffickers or handlers not to trust anyone, especially if we have, for example, we have cases of interceptions in transit areas. When we intercept the group, they usually lie about the real situation because they are being briefed during the recruitment phase. So they really distrust others, especially law enforcement. They're also afraid that they might be blamed by the law enforcers, or they might be like, you know, filed case
Um,
by the enforcers. And they also fear for their families, of course, because sometimes the traffickers or the recruiters are known to these victims, usually friends, neighbors, whom they trust really are the traffickers. So they fear that these traffickers might also threaten their family members as well. But there are also cases wherein the victims are the ones reporting their situation. Since we have a hotline operation, we receive numbers of cases also wherein the victims are the ones seeking for help.
okay. So that's why the immigration officers at the airport or at ports, you know, when you travel abroad are very strict and they ask a lot of questions, especially if it's your first time to get out of the country. So they're also trying to catch if someone is being trafficked or not, I suppose. Okay, well, thank you, Michelle and Miss Karine. I will pass you on to Miss Roma now for the second question.
Thank you so much, Ms. Flo. So the rise of the internet has not only provided fast access to information for our world, but has also provided faster and more efficient ways for organized crime to operate. The internet is also becoming a place of escorts and prostitution online, with just a few clicks using services like Backpage, Craigslist, Facebook, and the many chat rooms dedicated to these services. The internet is also being used by traffickers as a tool to aid in the recruitment of victims. Traffickers are utilizing social media to gather information on victims and create false profiles to create virtual relationships in order to groom future victims. Now, for our question number 2, how has cyberspace changed human trafficking? Maybe let's have first Miss Corinne for the second question.
Okay, so we believe that the cyberspace has really changed human trafficking. The internet and digital technology are currently fueling growth in trafficking, and the ways in which the online sphere is facilitating this growth are multifaceted. It has changed the face of recruitment in advertising and led to new forms of exploitation, such as webcam sex, which is a wherein the Philippines is considered as the global epicenter when it comes to sexual exploitation of children online. So, for example, let's take for example sex trafficking. So, in the online recruitment, The first phase is the online recruitment. So the internet provides traffickers with enormous scope to seek out and groom marginalized individuals, including the youth groups, the vulnerable youth groups. Sexual exploiters can scan social media for young, vulnerable individuals. We have a lot of cases like this in our Center of Hope, where we were able to help a lot of young people who were recruited online by these predators. Another is the online advertising. So uh, through the use of internet or the use of the cyberspace, these pedophiles use online advertisements, advertise their works online. They feature revealing photo, name, contact number, and even hourly rate. And they post it in their group page. They use different social networking sites wherein the buyers or those who wanted to access their videos will just visit those sites and then pay them money. So the transaction is really now online. And another is the rise in the online or commercial sexual exploitation of children. So these really, the advent of the internet or the a lot of pedophiles really took advantage of the anonymity in the cyberspace in victimizing a lot of children, especially in the Philippines. So they use the internet to connect with, even though they are abroad, they use the internet to connect with Filipinos who will be looking for young girls who are willing to show themselves in front of the camera, give nude shows, and it has really affected a lot of Filipino people. So that's how much the cyberspace has worsened the case of human trafficking.
Yes, I guess so that it happens a lot of times in the Philippines because of our economic status. Like we are a poor country, and a lot of people are doing this to survive. Just have a follow-up question here.
Yes.
Is there like a higher rate right now or increased numbers of cases because of this lockdown that we have?
So far, we cannot conclusively say that there has been an increase in the number of cases due to the lockdown, but we have been receiving a lot of reports. We have been receiving a lot of referrals on our own in Visayan, in Voice of the Free, since the start of the lockdown period. Sadly, because of sadly, when the lockdown started, we have been receiving a lot of reports, more reports than before, but we cannot say conclusively about the situation in the entire Philippines.
Okay, I got it. Thank you so much, Miss Karine. You were talking about, just one last, you were talking about online advertising a while ago. Is it easy to detect or check this kind of online advertising in the internet? Or it's quite difficult because maybe somehow they'll be using like other name, or maybe there will be like introducing a company, but there's like a hidden, what do you call this? Hidden agenda that it's about cyber sex or something.
Actually, it's quite easy to detect them. Some of them, they don't use Facebook, they don't use groups or pages, but they use the messenger, they use group chats. The Facebook page is just their facade, but they will connect and talk more about their business through group chats. So although it's quite easier to detect them in that way. They're not really hidden. Unfortunately, although they're very easy to find, but unfortunately the enforcement, especially in our cyberspace, and in policing in the internet is a law, enforcing laws in the internet in the Philippines is not very advanced.
I see. Thank you so much, Miss Karen. That's very useful information for all of us to know. Now let's also have Miss Cheryl. She's on mute.
Yes.
Oh, hi, Miss Cheryl. Yes, there.
Yeah, I think Corinne already discussed the, how cybersec changed the human trafficking. So it's really, traffickers really utilize all social media platforms in recruiting and in exploiting victims. Actually, we have received various cases wherein, the traffickers are having their own Facebook accounts. They have showed their victims online. It's like, goods, advertising goods, wherein the traffickers can choose which of the ladies for sale that they can afford, and then they can book it also through online. So I think in the first quarter of this year, we have encountered group of Chinese nationals who are here in the Philippines, being prostituted to also Chinese nationals. So the modus is that they're like food menus being advertised in the Facebook page, and then their customers are just scanning the menu, and then they set schedule for meetups. So that's how that human trafficking is now being done through online platforms. Yeah, so we are really honored today because we have here one of the survivors of human trafficking, and now she is also one of our advocates already.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So to our audience, we cannot show the face of our victim to protect her identity and for confidentiality purposes, but she is going to share with us her experience a few years ago, I think when she was still a minor.
Okay, I'm Georgia. I'm 22 years old, and
Hi,
today
Georgia. Welcome to Online Salon.
thank you so much. And today I'm going to share my experience. When I was 12 years old, I was victim of cyber sex human trafficking, and this guy I met was in a place where I stay with my family, and he just promised me to give me and my family a better life, and he just bring me here in Manila, and then he give everything what we need, and also he sent us in school, which is we study, and I treat him like my second father, and he's very kind. From the beginning, he was very nice person to us, and I didn't know, I didn't expect anything that it would everything will change. It just happened that we have to work at the age of 12. I have to work as an online model, which is in camera, in front of the camera at the age of 12. So I start to work as cybersex model at the age of 12, and it also happened for 5 years. And as what Ati just told you earlier, we have the 1 year old and 12 and 16. We're all minors in the small house, which is the computer was separated from the room. So we have the computer and camera, and we work as 24 hours, and we earn lots of money. And my trafficker earn lots of money, and the customer just sends some money, and the customer will come to the Philippines, and we will meet them. And then it's cyber sex, physically abuse, sexual abuse, and everything happened. And we're all minors. And then for 5 years, we're very thankful. And I'm very thankful that the police came and they rescued us. And we give the evidence and testify in court. And then social workers and the voice of the free help us a lot. And the healing program, the psychology, it took us 8 years before we were healed. And now I'm studying. I'm in third year college, and I'm one of the luckiest, not really lucky, but lucky person, lucky woman who been in college, and lucky also to travel abroad, to speak and invited in big event to speak about my story and to give awareness about human trafficking, to spread the awareness, and also as an advocate we go to different school about we talk I also share my story in school to also have awareness about trafficking the young children who are not yet trafficked, but to give them awareness about human trafficking.
Wow, that's thank God for Voice of the Free, and we are very happy that you are in a better place now, Miss Georgia. You said that you were trafficked when you were
Yeah,
12 years old, and then how long did it last?
it 5 years.
Five
So I
years. Okay, and you were rescued by the police?
yes,
Who gave the tip to the police about the? Did someone tell the police?
my sister.
Mm, okay. So that's great that you were rescued. And now we are happy for you, Miss Georgia. Miss Roma, do you have any questions?
I just have a one question. Like, did you not try to escape in that 5 years that you were in that, in that kind of situation? And I'm just like curious, like, what kind of place are you in? Do you have, don't you have any neighbors or somehow they notice there's something going illegal going on in your place? Like, you cannot ask for help to anyone. You cannot go out. How's the
So
situation?
we're all minors, so our trafficker, it's actually just a small house. We have the first floor and we have lots of neighbors, but our trafficker, he don't allowed us to go out or to have friends in outside in our neighbor or to go with the neighbors. So he's very strict, and we can't tell anyone because our neighbors knows that this guy he's very nice and he's very.
Oh, okay. One more question. Does he physically abused you? Like, for example, if you try, maybe if he caught you, or if you try to somehow escape or talk to other people, did he physically abuse any one of you?
Yes, he actually physical abuse, or he just slapped me in front of people, or when sometimes if ano sinungaling?
If you
if I
lie.
lie, if I lie, he's going to slap me in front of the people, and then he will physically abuse me.
Wow. Miss Georgia, how old was the your trafficker at that
Actually, that
time?
time was 30 plus.
Also,
Mm.
he was young.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's very nice. His um reputation outside is that he is a nice guy. Is
Nice.
that right?
Uh-uh.
So you can never tell, Miss Roma.
Oh no, we need to.
Sometimes the villains are the nice guys. Huh?
Yeah.
So and Miss Georgia, one last question. You mentioned that you were brought to Manila. May we know from where?
Actually in Quezon City.
Oh, you were brought, but you were originally
From
from
Mindanao. I actually live in
Mindanao.
the tribes are.
Okay, okay. So he really flew you to Manila.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much,
thank you, Miss
Miss Georgia.
Georgia.
We are honored by your presence today. I think our audience will learn a lot from your experience.
So much.
Thank you so much. Okay, so let's just continue our questions. So I still have here some follow-up questions. Let's have this last question. So aside from cyberspace, tourist spots have been a place for recruiting. How can we make sure that tourist spots will not be a niche for human trafficking? Maybe let's have Miss Karen.
Okay. Hi, I'm back.
Yes.
One way that we can make sure that our tourist spots will not be a niche to human trafficking is for us for us NGOs and our government and those private entities who manage hotels or who operate these tourist spots to actually work together. We know that we have this association of hotel owners or resorts that they are a group of hotel owners or resort owners, and our suggestion is to have them organized, have them informed of human trafficking, and not only them but also their workers, so that they will be able to know if there are some illegal activities or human trafficking activities that are already taking place in their premises. So there must be awareness on the part of the hotel owners, the resort owners, or those owners of some tourist spots, and not only them but also their workers, so they can help in watching or guarding whenever and reporting as well whenever these human trafficking activities are happening.
I just have a follow-up question about this. Is this kind of situation very common, like tourists are like victims of human trafficking? Like when they visit a certain country, like mostly or most of the time, tourists are the victims for human trafficking.
I just want to clarify, you mean the tourists themselves become the victims?
Yes.
Well, there are instances, especially let's take for example, when some Filipinos go abroad, they use tourist visas, they say that they are just tourists, they will just be tourists in the place wherever they will go, but actually what they have at the back of their minds is to work. So this increase their vulnerability to trafficking when they reach their point of destination. So there is high risk for them to to be victimized or to be sold into prostitution or some human trafficking activities. Also, another is when some tourists enter the Philippines, most commonly they are the ones who serves as the buyers or the customers for this sexual activities, and the ones who become victims are the poor Filipinos.
I see. Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Karine. Now, I guess we're all done with the second question. Now let's proceed and let's continue the discussion with Ms. Florence.
Thank you, Ms. Roma. Clearly, fighting human trafficking is a new frontier that is constantly evolving. Human trafficking cannot be fought solely on a legal or technical basis. Prevention efforts need to focus on the intersection of strict intergovernment cooperation, social engineering, and technology. It involves human beings, and therefore the corruption of human relationship is involved at one stage or another, whether it is the trafficker's promise of a better life or the abuse of physical relations through services of the victims. Our third question is, how can we help the fight against human trafficking? So maybe we can talk about some of the programs that Voice of the Free Foundation have to help the victims of human trafficking or to avoid human trafficking. Let's start with Ms. Karine.
Okay, so there are many ways to help fight human trafficking. Number one, I will give 4 ways on how to fight human trafficking. Number one is first awareness. First is awareness raising. We have to first be informed what is human trafficking, and then we also have to inform other people. So you mentioned that BF has a radio program in Mindanao which is called Tingog sa Kagawasan. So we use it as a way for us to raise awareness to people in far-flung areas to people who do not have access to electricity. So they use battery-powered radio in their areas. And through that radio program, we are able to inform them about the works of these recruiters so that they will not end up being victimized by this by human traffickers. So another is for us to help fight human trafficking is to volunteer. We can volunteer and support anti-trafficking efforts in our community in our own little ways. We can also meet with our leaders and or those agencies, government agencies or NGOs that help fight human trafficking to know that we are willing to work with them in combating human trafficking and ask them what can we do to address it. For example, in Voice of the Free, we have 3 ways to volunteer. So number 1 is they can volunteer at our Center of Hope. This is a center, a shelter where we house the trafficking survivors. So they can help or extend their help in teaching general education courses, teach our survivors some music or sports, and volunteer in teaching them some activities that that can help them process, or they can help in their healing process. Another way to volunteer in Voice of the Free is to help us in the I Fight movement. I Fight movement, it's a youth movement that seeks to raise awareness among the young people in order to empower them to be proactive in the fight against human trafficking. So when they wanted to volunteer in I Fight, they can spearhead an I Fight movement campus tour in a school near them in order to raise the awareness of the in-school youth. And so that's it. And also, they can also volunteer in our communities. So in VF, we have a community watch group in Visayas. So there we are helping a group of mothers have their own social enterprise. So they can also volunteer in our Bantay Comunidad, as we call it, in Dumandan in Visayas. And that's it for the ways to volunteer in VF. And the third way to help human trafficking is to organize a fundraiser and donate to NGOs who are really working or making progress in the fight against human trafficking. And number 4 is to become a mentor or to become a friend to someone who is in need, because traffickers, as we learned in our discussion, they often target youth who are going through a difficult time, who are really vulnerable, emotionally vulnerable, and those who lack support systems, because the victims of human trafficking or cyber sex in particular are not only those in poverty, but even young people who are well off, but they lack support system. So they are easy targets for these pedophiles. So maybe by being a mentor, you can be involved in creating new and positive experiences in that person's life during his or her formative years. So in that way, it won't be that easy for the pedophiles to reach out to them through social media and victimize them into sexual exploitation.
Wow, thanks a lot for that, Miss Karine. And I think the I Fight video, we will show it later at the end of the program. So let's go back to Miss She. Ma'am, would you like to add to that? And can you also tell us what are the steps that one can take to make sure that she will not be subject to human trafficking online specifically?
Yeah, just one addition to what Karine has said, in ways on how you can help human trafficking. Of course, you must be conscientious customer and investor. We need to check the products that we are purchasing. because sometimes there are companies who have slavery footprints. So we really need to check if there are child laborers in that particular company. So we must be aware of that also. And just additional government programs that we have so far. The IACAT, or the Interagency Council Against Trafficking, has this 1343 action line against human trafficking. So this is basically a 24/7 hotline facility that responds to the emergency or crisis calls from concerned citizens and from the victims themselves, reporting for either rescue operation or immediate interventions. And also, they have legal counseling also being offered to victims and their families. All right. So, in order to not to be subjected to human trafficking, of course, we have some tips for the social media usage of social media. Everyone should think before posting anything, because once we've posted something online, it's there forever. So anyone can access that post, and be as anonymous as possible also, and as much as possible use privacy setting, like not disclosing your passwords, your account details as well, and avoid posting anything that could embarrass you later, because it will expose you also to dangerous situation. Yeah, so those are some of the tips that we have so far.
Okay. Speaking of online human trafficking now, Michelle, has it increased because of the pandemic? Because I have been seeing, especially for OSEC, online sexual exploitation of children, they've been doing a lot of advocacy campaigns nowadays.
Yes, we can't really say that there's an increasing number of cases due to the pandemic, but based on the reports that we are having and reading from different forms, media forms, there are really lots of cases now because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
You know, because everyone is confined at home and they don't have means of living, so they're resorting to online sexual um, activities, because for the online activities you only need a set of computer with
Exactly.
internet connection, then we can do facilitate online activities. So it's very easy, and given the restrictions, you know, having work outside, having this online sexual activities is one of the options, really. Actually, there are victims that we've reintegrated to their families and communities, um, whom we are monitoring closely, because we're afraid that they may slide back to online sexual activities. So that's why Voice of the Free, we have this program like proactive monitoring of the reintegrated cases so that we can prevent them from sliding back. But there are cases or reported cases from our partners from the PNP that they have been rescuing lots of victims who are engaged in sexual online exploitation because of the pandemic.
Yes. And Michelle, as a follow up to that, by the way, because we know that most of these victims are victimized by syndicates, by organized syndicates, right? But is it true that now it is also becoming some sort of business by parents themselves?
Yes, actually, it is true that it is a highly syndicated crime, but um, nowadays, parents are also involved in trafficking their kids. Actually, we have a case of siblings aged 1 and 2, and the trafficker is their mother. So they are being sold online because, you know, for the online sexual exploitation or online sex trafficking, there's a misconception that there's no exploitation happening because it's being done online. So parents have this misconception that the kids are not really exploited because they're just showing their nude bodies and no one is touching them physically.
Right. But of course, we know that that's not true.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Michelle. And as our final question for today, to whom should we report if we feel that we are being exploited or subjected to human trafficking? Do we have specific numbers, ma'am? For example, if you're from the Visayas, and later maybe from Ms. Karine can talk to us about Mindanao also and in Luzon, that people can go to report human trafficking if they suspect that maybe a neighbor is running a human trafficking house or somewhere, or if they personally know a victim, maybe they can report it.
Yeah, for the national hotline, we have the IACAT hotline 1343. So they can dial directly to that number.
1343.
43, yes.
And that's nationwide, Michelle.
That's nationwide, yes.
Okay. 1343.
So as we move towards the end of the program, let's have some questions from our viewers from YouTube and Facebook. So for the first question, this is related to your question a while ago about the parents. So what drives the parents to do this act?
To sell their children
Yes,
online.
yes, to sell their children online.
Maybe Miss Karine can answer that this time.
Maybe some factors that drive the parents to do this to their children is number one, of course, their economic situation, their poverty. I believe that there are no parents who would really want to do that to their children if only they have enough to feed them, enough on their table. I think the poverty is the number one factor that really pushes them to do this evils to their children. Number two is like what Atasha mentioned, the misconception that they are not doing any harm to their children, that this cyber sex does not really qualify as sexual exploitation because they are not physically touched or physically abused. But what they do not realize is the mental or the emotional trauma that these cause to their children. And uh, other factor maybe is because some of the parents are already into it themselves, so they think of it as a family business that where they can just involve their children because they are already into it. So maybe these are some of the major factors why parents parents do allow or do push their children into these kind of activities.
Yeah, that is so sad to hear.
Yeah.
Family business.
Yeah, they even term it as a cottage industry in the Philippines because it's happening
Everywhere.
even in neighboring houses. So that's their term already, considering that the Philippines is now the global epicenter of cyber sex.
Okay. What's the punishment if caught, Miss Karine?
The punishment for qualified trafficking, I believe it's 20 to 25 years of imprisonment and a fine of about 5 million, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the ultimate punishment, reclusion perpetua, for those who are caught trafficking minors, qualified trafficking.
For example, the parents got caught. I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead, Roma.
If the parents got caught, well, where will the children go? Like, will they be in an
Social work,
or an organization, or they will be what do you call this? To the
DSWD
relatives.
usually, yeah.
We have a lot of cases like that in Voice of the Free. The common result of that is um, first we will assess if the victims can be taken care of by their nearest relatives, but most of the time their relatives also are not able to take care of them because they themselves are also financially constrained. So if that is the case, then they will be taken care of by NGOs or the DSWD. So in VF, we house a lot of children who are separated from from their parents because their parents are also the perpetrators. They are staying with us until we can assure that they are already qualified to live on their own or to be reintegrated back to their communities.
Okay, so since we're talking about NGOs, so what are the programs that can help victims recover from the traumas they suffered? Maybe let's have Miss Cheryl.
Yes, I think this question is more about the psychological. Are there any psychological therapy, Michelle, that are offered to victims as well?
Yeah, so we have short-term and long-term facilities to cater to these victims. So we have a holistic set of services being provided to these victims of abuse to really address their trauma to heal a victim. It also depends on the extent or the depth of the trauma acquired by the victims. So we really make sure that we have psychologists with us, and also we have social workers, in-house social workers staying at the shelter. And we also partner psychiatric intervention as well, because as NGO, we also have our own limitations. We can't really provide everything. So that's why we really partner with others. And then since one of the problems also of these victims, how we can sustain them while they are having the legal case ongoing. So we also have economic empowerment services because, these victims also needs to have their own income while at the shelter. So we introduce to them social entrepreneurship activities. So we want them to have like income generating activities while at the center, for them to have startup capitals once we discharge them from our shelter, and they can have small capitals that they can begin with. And also we partner with the Department of Justice through the IACAT in the prosecution of their cases. So yeah, it's really investing to partnership in order to provide every service that a victim may need.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cheryl. How long does it usually take for the recovery program of a victim?
So the recovery program of the victim, it depends on the trauma that they have. Usually at the Center of Hope, we have like a short-term program that's 6 months to 1 year. But we also have cases that lasts for more than 2 years because we're still addressing the trauma and also preparing the parents or the community. Sometimes the victims are ready for integration, but the community and the families are not yet ready for the eventual reintegration. So we can't really reintegrate them to their community if, for example, human trafficking case in that particular community is still rampant. So in order to assess that, we coordinate closely with the local government units, DSWD, local DSWD, in order to assess the community, the readiness of the community and their families as well.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cheryl and Ms. Karen, for answering the questions from our audience. Now, let's move on to the next part of our discussion. We would love to hear your messages from our dear guests, of course, to our viewers. Now let's have the message from Miss Karine.
Thank you so much once again for inviting us here in Online Salon. And to all our viewers, I just would like to remind you that this life is the life that we have is a gift of our creator, and it should never be for sale. That is the case for us, and that must also be the case for those victims of human trafficking. So we hope that each of us can be the voice of the human trafficking victims. Thank you once again for inviting us, and we hope we can join with you again next time.
Thank you so much, Miss Karine. Now let's also have Miss Cheryl.
Yes, so on behalf of Voice of the Free, we are really grateful to be part of this online salon for today. Yes, so we at Voice of the Free cannot really do the work alone. We really need partners. That's why we are encouraging you to be part. Don't be a bystander. Get involved. Your own little way can be part of the solution to end or at least eradicate the issue of human trafficking.
Thank you so much, Miss Cheryl. And let's also have Miss Florence.
Yes, so thank you so much, Miss Cheryl and Miss Karine, for gracing our show today. I think a lot of people need to be aware of human trafficking, especially now that we are in a crisis. We are in a pandemic, and money is not easy to come along. A lot of people might think that it's fine to sell their children online, for example, because there's really no physical touch. But yes, the trauma, the emotional trauma, and the psychological trauma that will bring to the children will impact them for the rest of their lives. So I hope that people will think twice before they do that. And I hope that our government will do something to stop the increase of cases as soon as possible. So a lot of people don't also feel desperate enough to go into this. So again, thank you to Voice of the Free Foundation, used to be Visayan Forum, and I'm glad to know that you're doing so much, so many programs to help build awareness and to help the victims of human trafficking. And Miss Roma, we've heard from Miss Georgia earlier. That was an honor to actually hear it from a victim. And I hope that schools and other groups can use this video later on to help spread awareness as well about human trafficking.
Thank you so much, Miss Flo. Yes, this discussion really touched my heart, since we have talked to Miss Georgia, who was a victim of human trafficking. So social media is really powerful right now, and it can do everything. So we need to be really careful. And this has been a very meaningful discussion again. So we hope you learn as much as we did from our speakers. Well, thank you so much to our guests for today and to everyone who joined us, including, of course, the technical staff. This will not be possible without each of you. And we're looking forward to seeing you again to our next online salon. Thank you for watching us, and please don't forget to leave a comment, like, and share our Facebook page, and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, GLCA TV. And now let's have the thought of the day.
All right, our thought of the day. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. That's from Martin Luther King Jr. So to each of the victims of human trafficking, though you feel unwanted, unloved, and uncared for, do not let your hope be taken away. Fight for what is right and do not live in fear. Report. The number for human trafficking is again 1434. Is that correct?
Are we
Okay, we
correct,
have
Michelle?
to. Michelle, is that correct?
1343.
1343. Thank you for
And
that.
for the outside hotline, we have 0995 188 3812.
I'm sorry, is it 0995?
188
Mm-hmm.
3812.
3812. Okay, so you need to contact this number 0995-188-3812. Correct.
Thank you, everyone. Again, this is Florence.
And this is Rama. And of course, we will leave you this video from Voice of the Free Foundation. Stay safe, everyone.
9 years old ako nung nagsimula magtrabaho ng cyber sex model. Then, ang pinaka-worst na pinagawa sa amin ay yung pinapaharap kami sa camera na hubad lahat. Walang damit, walang pantalon, gano'n. Then, kung ano pinapagawa sa amin. Ngayon, nag-aaral ako ngayon and second year na ako sa kursong Hotel and Restaurant Services at patuloy na nilalabanan ang human trafficking. I am Kimi and I fight human trafficking.
Human trafficking is a crime. It robs our women, men, and children of their dignity and human rights. Every year, 60,000 to 100,000 Filipino children are trafficked into sexual exploitation or forced labor.
Ngunit napakarami rin po mga mapang-abusong tao na nag-aabang sa mga naghahanap ng trabaho para ma-recruit sa prostitusyon at pang-aalipin hindi lamang sa ibang bansa, kundi pati sa ating bansa.
We must join the fight against human trafficking and modern slavery. Join the I Fight movement.